I'm Dr. Eric Okuku. I'm a biochemist and pollution expert working for Kenya Marine and Fisheries Research Institute. I've been working on pollution issues for the last 15 years around Mombasa and the entire Kenyan coast. % of pollutants that are entering the ocean come from the land. So basically, we've seen an increase in the level of pollutants in the coastal waters of Mombasa for the last around 10 years. And the genesis of this problem is that the population of Mombasa has been growing, has been on a steady increase. The effect is that we are getting most of sewage being discharged into the ocean raw, not treated. And the part that is treated is partially treated. To appreciate how widespread the impact of raw sewage discharge is in Mombasa, we'll be visiting 3 creeks, the peri-urban creeks. The first one is Tudor Creek. Across the creek, we have Moroto informal settlement, and as you can see, the houses are constructed just a few meters away from the high water mark. This settlement is not served by any sewage management facility, and as such, their wastewater plus all the sewage is directly discharged into Tudor Creek. There's a small channel there of sewage. There are some other channels just a few meters away, and as you can see, they're just discharging raw sewage. You can see where they are fishing. A few meters away from it.
And swimming.
And swimming. As you can see across there, we have fishermen just fishing and children swimming just a few meters away from the discharge point.
Kweli kwa mazingira hapa baharini sipo harakati yenye waweza kuvuta nyavu hivi, ukienda kuinua tapu wapata mavi, alafu kuna marondo, sijui marondo ya ng'ombe hapa pia za mwagwa ndani pia. Hatujui zatoka wapi, waweza kupata kwa mfuko mweusi imefungwa. Ukienda kuinua hivi ni marondo, sijui ni ya ng'ombe, sijui ni takataka gani.
Kule kuna kama mitaro ambao kwamba inatoa maji huko juu. Sasa kama vipi? Sasa zinamimina maji tu na taka mpaka ukiangalia maji machafu.
Wengine wanaweza kuwa tunafanya kazi ndio tukapata matakataka yametupwa tu huko ovyo yani. Sasa inakuwa ni uchafu ndio tunaokuwa sisi.
There's some stream of sewage just coming in through the upper part of the creek, and basically that sewage is originating from Coast General Hospital, and the concern that we have with the sewage from the hospital is because of the chemicals that are used, both for cleaning and for diagnosis. For instance, chemotherapy is done by a number of chemicals, including radioactive material, and all those, if they are discharged into a marine ecosystem, they can easily get into the food chain, and that could have adverse effect not only on marine organisms but also human beings that really feed on this kind of fish. We know that also when you use antibiotics, not the whole of it is utilized. So we also can find trace of antibiotics, trace of birth control pills in sewage, and all those have more or less similar impacts on marine organisms, just the same impact that they have on on human beings. If you look down, the color is more or less milky. That is typical characteristic of water that is receiving sewage. And if you look a little bit outside, the sediment, we expect it to be black. When you degrade organic matter in the absence of enough oxygen, then you expect that dark coloration of sediments. This is unfortunate. This is a creek that has been used by local communities since so many years ago. This is the only source of livelihood that they've had, And when we start discharging raw sewage into a creek, then we deny these people a lifetime, right that they've had since they were born, of fishing and enjoying these creeks for recreational activities. This sewer line serves basically two estates, the railway quarters, and we have KPA quarters up there. All the sewage is channeled through here. Then it is discharged into the ocean through this channel. And you can see there's no treatment. Any treatment that is done is basically discharged into the ocean raw. The discharge point was supposed to be where Gilbert is, but apparently there's a blockage there. So we get now seepage along the cracks, and this is purely sewage. It floods the whole of this place. During high tide, it gets its way down, and again also some gets into the ocean through underground seepage.
So we have a toilet. Then they drain direct.
They drain direct? There's a pipe?
There's a pipe, a very good one.
And there are fresh ones here. There are fresh ones here, so be careful. Don't move very close to me. So from here, it flows directly.
There are a number of ways through which you get sewage into the ocean. The first one is a point source, the one that you see it flowing. And the other one is non-point source. So very many diffuse sources that you don't see it actually flowing, but it discharges into the ocean through underground water. And one thing that is promoting that in Mombasa is that almost all the houses use soak pits. There are standards that are set for construction of soak pits so that it is made waterproof. So anything that is inside the soak pit should not be leaving the soak pit. But again, I think the government lacks capacity to enforce this. And you get cases in Mombasa that the soak pits are made of materials that are permeable, so water can easily pass. So the sewage that is inside the soak pit gets its way into groundwater. Then groundwater, of course, discharges at some point. It connects with the seawater at some point. There are very many parts of Mombasa that are not served by reliable piped water. So, funnily enough, you sink a borehole for your freshwater needs just next to a soak pit that is not properly lined. So basically, the water you are taking is your sewage.
This is Mikindani Creek, and you can see a mangrove vegetation around. When you look on the vegetation and on the land down there, you can see different kind of lines. Those are sewage lines from the informal and formal settlements up behind us, and they are all channeled to the ocean direct without any treatment. And when we go near them, you'll see the evidence of the same. as you can see, there are lots of channels releasing sewage to the same place. So all this sewage is coming from both the formal and the informal settlements up there. When the sewage is too much like this, it means that maybe there's a consolidated place where it is being released direct. That's why it's forming the bigger channels. But at some period of time, you realize that some channels are drying up, meaning the sewage is channeling itself again to different directions. So the whole of this place is polluted.
Kweli zamani na sasa kuna tofauti kubwa. Hata ukiangalia sehemu nyingine za bahari ni kama zimepungua kidogo. Pengine ni michanga ndio imezidi. Kama ukienda sehemu za Mkomani pale, wakati tukiogelea palikuwa pako na maji, lakini sasa hivi ukifika pamezibwa na michanga. Sasa huenda zile nyumba za samaki pia nyingine zimefukiwa kwa ajili ya, kwa sababu samaki wengi pia wanazaliwa humu ndani ya creek. Sasa kama kuna athari kama hizo za sewage ama takataka, lazima mayai ya samaki ama samaki wenyewe pia watakuwa hawezi kuzalia kule ndani. Kwa hivyo ni lazima serikali pia nayo iangalie uchafu wale wakazi wa kule creek ama utupaji wa takataka. Unajua watu wengi ilikuwa zamani hivi karibuni wanatupa takataka ndani ya bahari. Ndio wanaona ni kama dustbin.
We are currently at Makupa Creek. This is a creek that we've done pollution monitoring for since 2008. We have a station that we call Makupa dump site station, basically to monitor the impact of the dump site on a marine ecosystem. The dump site is a cocktail of all kind of waste that you get from home. We have tire remains, vehicle tire, you have used electronics, you have food remains, every kind of waste is here. And during rainy seasons, the whole of it is swept into the ocean. Behind us here, you'll see healthy mangroves, and they are very important in a marine ecosystem because they act as a breeding ground of fish. Some feed there, spawn there. When we have like very heavy rains, all the sediments that are coming from landlocked side should be filtered, and they remain at mangrove area. And by so doing, they protect coral reefs and seagrass that are easily smoothed with the said sediments from a terrestrial environment. So there have been a bit of development, the number of bridges that are constructed that has raised more or less the sea bottom. So currently, Makupa Creek that used to have alternating exposed seabed and the flooding, at the moment is more or less permanently flooded. And that's why you see mangroves are basically dead, because they cannot withstand permanent flooding. They have to get alternating flooding and exposure. One organism that is usually associated with polluted water is jellyfish. When we started monitoring here, there was no jellyfish. But in the last 3-4 years, in the last 2-3-4 years, there has been an explosion of jellyfish here. So, apart from being an indicator of pollution, it renders the water not fit for recreation. So you cannot swim because they sting, and very painful stings. So basically, we've rendered this creek not fit for recreational facility. Yeah, so these are jellyfish. Sometime back when the level of pollution was a little bit low, they used not to exist here. But at the moment, given the increasing pollution status of this creek, we've started observing them since the last 2 years. And basically this is occurring because of a shift in food web. The kind of food that used to be there before is shifting with the increasing level of pollution, 1. 2, the environment is becoming harsh. The level of dissolved oxygen is reducing over time because sewage is basically an organic pollutant. So for it to degrade, it requires a lot of oxygen. And again, in areas with sewage, we expect a bit, let me have a look at this, Gilbert. We are having a shift in a population structure from that is plankton dominated to more or less macro algae, like these are filamental algae. Leta huku. But how about, do we need to release the do we need to release the messenger by
We're counting that is
maybe 1 meter down. I don't know how deep this place is. Bring it on board.
let have sampling bottles.
Do you have a tube? Microbiology. A nutrient. We're having a salinity of 33.8, looks normal. Then pH, it is around 8.53. That is expected in polluted waters with very high productivity.
This is a water sample. So right now what I want to do is inoculate this water sample into the medium, which is the maconke broth, so that these microorganisms, which we suspect that are present in that water source, can grow, and we are able to enumerate and know the exact number and the position of pollution within that site. When you have inoculated, you have to now to incubate this sample at a temperature of 37, and you give them a duration of 24 hours for them to grow. So I place them in the incubator.
We've collected samples in Makupa, Mtwapa and Tudor Creeks, and compared the densities that we have with the areas that are least impacted by pollution. So areas are very pristine. And the case we have here is Gazi Bay in the south coast. And when we look at chlorophyll A, which gives an indication of the algal densities, then we find that Gazi only had levels like 0.9 milligrams per liter, while Makupa, which is the most impacted, was having levels that is having levels close to 4.7 milligrams per liter. Tudor Creek and Mtwapa are relatively less impacted with the levels about 2.1 milligram per liter. Again, another indicator of pollution is what we call biological oxygen demand. In a normal seawater that is not impacted, pristine seawater, we expect levels like 2 milligrams per liter. But in Mombasa creeks, that is Makupa, Tudor, and Mtwapa, we are observing levels that are close to 4-5 milligrams per liter. So it is an indication that something wrong is happening.
So after 24 hours, the media which you are seeing, which contain the sample but has not changed the color, this one is a negative one. So it means there were no coliforms, so the media just remained purple. This is a positive sample. The media which was initially purple in color has changed to yellowish. This shows there is presence of those coliforms, and they normally contaminate the water source.